Hi everyone! Today we are going to be learning how to make French knots. French knots are simply to do embroidery stitch, but it's also a little bit tricky, and I know that many people don't like French knots and avoiding them to do. It can be very frustrating if you are trying to make French knots without knowing the technique, so trust me, it's a lot easier as you can think, but it requires some practicing. You will need to spend some time to learn how to make them properly. Once you get the hang of it, you will not find any excuses to avoid doing French knots, and I'm sure you will be really love doing them. French knots are my favorite details that can be added to my projects, that can be used to make flowers and center of the flowers, and everywhere you can add some dots. See how they can be really nicely implemented to any embroidery projects you can do. You can even add some French knots to fill some spaces, to create clouds like this, trees, bushes, and even ships can be made using French knots. And today we are going to be learning how to do French knots properly and which mistakes you can make. I recommend to practice doing French knots on some piece of fabrics. Here is the fabric which I will show you how which mistakes you can do, and you can also take some fabric with this kind of weaving, so I will also be showing the mistakes you can do using this fabric too. It should be placed in the hoop, so the fabric will be tight. I'm using a big embroidery needle like this. It has a big eye and sharp point, and you can use embroidery needles or cravel needles. I'm using the biggest needle from this set from DMC. You can also use any other, maybe you might find some bigger eyes like this, so you will be able to stitch using full 6 strands of floss. The size of the needle can be bigger or smaller depending on how many strands you are going to use. You can also use a milliner or sewing needle like this. They are slightly different from a regular embroidery needle. You can see that embroidery needle has a bigger eye and it's slightly bigger than the shaft. The milliner needle, the key is that the shaft here is the width the same as the eye, which make it easier to pass through the knot. But I noticed that I can thread only 3 strands of floss, and maybe for more strands of floss you will need a bigger needle than this one. You can do French knots without any hoop stand, but you might need to put your hoop on the table in order to have both free hands. So I like to do French knot and hold it in my hoop stand, so this way I can do them faster and I can have both of my hands free all the time. So in case if you are doing French knots without the hoop stand, you need to bring the needle up, and you need to keep your thread using another hand like this. I'm right-handed, so I keep my thread using the left hand. You need to place your needle this way and wrap 1 or 2 times and put your needle down into not in the same place where you started, but near this place, and by holding this thread using the left hand. So now you need to bring up your hoop, but you still keeping your thread using your left hand. And now you can go through the French knot. Don't hurry, and you can let it go when it's closer to the end. So this is how you can do French knots without any hoop stand. And in more details, I will show you how you can do it with the hoop stand. So let's do it one more time. To make a French knot, bring your needle up through the fabric where you want to plait the knot. Hold the thread using your non-stitched hand. Wrap your thread around the needle once for a small knot and twice or 3 times for a larger knot. Avoid wrapping more than 3 times like this, because it will end up with a loopsy knot. So I'm wrapping only once, for example, and to finish the knot, insert the needle back into the fabric close to the hole you came out, almost in the same hole but not exactly in the same hole. Keep the thread using the left hand. This way you keep your loops tight and control the thread in order to avoid knots. You don't have to yank it, just hold it. You don't have to keep a lot of tension on working thread, you just want to have enough to hold the shape of a knot, and thread should pass through easily. So if you have too much tension, you will chop the needle, it won't be able to pass through. Then slowly put the needle and working thread through the wrapped loops to complete a French knot. Don't do it too fast, because you can make unwanted knots and mess, especially if you have a long thread. Let's do it one more time. Let's wrap 2 times. I keep my thread. You can even put your finger near the French knot. Don't do it fast, because you can make unwanted knots and mess, especially if you are having a long thread. And you have a nice French knot. See, it's super easy. Just get more practicing and you become a pro after stitching my sampler page. If you enjoy watching my video tutorial and my tips and tricks were helpful for you, please make sure to give it a like and comment and subscribe to my YouTube channel. Don't forget to hit the bell so you will not miss my next video tutorials. Now let's see which mistakes people usually do when trying to make French knots. The first mistake is better to show on this piece of fabric. Don't go down into the same hole. See, when I do French knot and I do into exactly the same hole when I come up, and when I use this type of fabric, especially when I'm wrapping only once, there is a high risk that you will come up with French knots on the back side, like this. As a result, you have a French knot pulled through the fabric to the back side. It happens often, especially if you use such linen fabric or Zweihart fabric like this, which is not tightly woven fabric, and it has a bigger holes. The second mistake is when people don't keep the thread and it doesn't have any tension. So I don't keep my thread using left hand, and I go through the fabric like this, and as a result you can have such a loosey French knot. If it doesn't look too bad, let's do it one more time. You can fix it. Let's do it 3 times like this. Let's do it 1 time. So if it's not too bad, you can fix it by making another 1 or 2 French knots near that knot. I come up outside and I come inside the loop. So it's useful if you are filling the area with French knots only, and you can hide this mistake by adding just a few more French knots like this, and then it's gonna look just okay, and nobody will find out that that was a mistake. If you don't like French knot at all, you will have to cut it out. But in this case, nobody will notice and you will not have to cut it out at all. One more mistake, don't tight it too much. For example, if I tight it too much like this, I'm not going to be able to go through my needle through it, and it's going to be too hard like this. And if you are going to make it too tight, so it can create a really small French knot. Another mistake is when you are not putting your needle properly. I saw some people, they do French knot this way. So they put the needle towards the fabric and they are trying to make French knot this way. But as a result, you just make a teeny stitch like this. If you want to make it properly, you need to put your needle against the fabric, like this. And then you are wrapping your needle 1, 2 or 3 times. And then you put your needle close to the hole when you come up. And this way you can have a nicely looking French knot like this. One more mistake is when you do more than 3 wraps. I don't recommend to do more than 3 laps because it will create a loopy stitch like this. So you can see that there are a lot of loops and it's not going to look like a regular French knot. So just don't do more than 3 wraps. Another mistake is when people use too long thread. Usually your thread should be from your fingers to the elbow. So this is, guys, an example of this type of mistake that you can do when you use too long strands. So this is it, and it can be disappointing. You can try to fix this using your needle because it's so teeny, but it's not always working, and often you just can leave it as it is and you will need to cut it. So I was trying to fix it with my needle and it wasn't working for me, so I decided just to cut it and fix the end of the thread on the back side. So this is how it looks like. So I have a little bit of thread on the top, so I leave it. I don't cut it too close because on the back side I was able to find this tail and fix it from the back side. I used 2 strands of floss and I had a loop on one side, so I was able to fix this tail close to the fabric and sew it a little bit. I did a few stitches and then I just cut it off. So that's how you can do French knots. As you can see, it's easy, and if you know the technique and practice a lot, you will be a master on it. If you liked my video tutorial and my tips and tricks were helpful for you, please make sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel and hit the bell, and you will not miss my next video tutorials. In my next video tutorial, I will be showing my stitching process for French knot sample page. You can get this sampler and many other samples like this if you join my stitching club on Patreon. It's a perfect place if you are a beginner and don't know where to start. Definitely check out my Patreon page to see all the benefits you can get. That's it, thank you so much for watching and see you next time. Bye!